Welcome everybody at this HelloID release webinar of the January release of the new year, of course. Hopefully you can hear me well and you can see me well, because there were some issues with the YouTube live streaming a few minutes ago, so probably it works. Please give me a heads up if it works, because then I can continue. Just to be sure, before I check, you can see the voting. We got a voting of the new features. So if you want to vote on your favorite feature, and I will discuss that of course first, you can go to the chat and there is a link in it, and there you can click on it and you can vote on a feature that I will talk first, and probably more information, giving more information about that feature than the other features, so I can have more focus on that. Don't see any. Let me check if there are any comments. I don't see any comments, so hopefully you can hear me well. I think let's continue. Let me check if there are any votings. Oh yeah, okay, so I think people are listening because I see votes, so that's good. So the delegated form activities, 100%, there is one vote on it. So hopefully there are more people that are voting. Else we're going to begin with that. Okay, let's begin, and then we will see the other ones, the other features. Also the incidents, it's not only the field task, but also there is a different incident which I cannot show in this demo, but I will talk about it, what happens. So the delegated form activities. So first off, let's go to the new screen. So if we go to delegation and you go to activities, you will now see a list of the activities. And with activities we mean is when you open a form and activity is started. So you can see all the things happening, the activities happening in the delegation form. And maybe some other people will say, okay, but we already have that with the delegated forms. So if we go to the delegated forms and we go to, let's say this form, and we go to submissions, we also see the activities of the, or the submissions of that form. But there's a big difference between a submission and an activity, because an activity already starts when you're opening the form. So the activity will contain the submission, but it's not only the submission, but also when the form opens. And I will show that to you. So what we here is have a list of the forms opening, and of course it could be submitted as a state. But let's go through this. I'm opening a second window to make this easier to explain. And I'm going to the end user side and go to the service desk. So here I'm at the service desk. I will show the AD account show details form. And if I'm opening this and go back to the activities and I do a refresh, you will see at the time this webinar is, you will see that there's a new record. And you already see it's submitted no. And this is my username, it's the administrator. I logged in with the administrator, as you can see, and also with the end user. And if I open this now, I don't have any more details, only the start date of the activity. So when I open the form, the user, and if it's submitted, yes or no. But if I go through it, so let's say I'm searching here and I'm entering Pete. So So now I'm the end user and I enter Pete. So it searched through Active Directory to search for Pete for accounts. And it shows me here the accounts. And with HelloID, you do this with a data source. And if you go back to the activity now and refresh this, and here we have that activity, which is still open, and I open it. Now you will see that there's data source logging. And if I go to the data source logging and I open my data source, which is used in the form, you will see my search query is Pete. I search for it and there are 2 results. And that's actually correct with what I'm seeing here. So that means is that if you do something here, it will also be logged inside the activity. So this makes it really easy to track what users are doing and how it works. And let's go through a step further. So let's say, okay, I'm going to select this one. And now there are 2 tables loading, one with the properties and the other with the memberships of that user. So I can go back again. I have to refresh it, but normally, of course, the user is already done the processing. You will see everything, but I want to do this step by step so you can see this easily. So now if I'm going to data source logging, I see 2 different data sources. The get attribute basics, which was the top one, and the group memberships. So if you look here, it will search for the selected user and it find them and it retrieves the basic attributes. And also, of course, with the memberships. And this is really neat because now we have everything in one place, right? Because now you can just see what the user has done inside the delegated form. And of course, the last step is if I submit it, and if I go back and refresh it, you will see the no is changed to yes because it's submitted now, it's successfully. And if I open it again, I will also have the form submission logging. So besides the data source logging, so knowing what happens and what data sources are loaded, and with the logging, I also see my form submission logging. So what the user entered inside the form. And we're going to add, in the future, we're going to add multiple data types like the task logging. We're going to add that as well in this form. So you can see the complete track of what the user did at that moment with this instance of the form. So it's really easy to debug or to check what the user has done inside that run of the form, that instance, or in this case, that activity. You can also use it for debugging, like I mentioned. So let me make a small change. So if I go into the form I just saw, let's go to show details, and I'm going to the form, which I just saw. And let's say in the first form, I have made a data source here. And in my PowerShell script, which is my data source, I'm going to say write error. Data source not working. You don't want to do this in production, of course, but in this case, because it's a little test, I can show you how it works, which is really neat, I think. So now I'm going to save it, update field, and let's go back to the delegate form, to the activities, and let's start this form again. So now again, I'm in user. And again, I'm searching for Pete. Currently it does the same, but there's a big difference. Normally it could be, of course, that there is no data retrieved and the user didn't see any data, but I didn't shut down the script. So in this case, it works well, but in normal cases, the end user doesn't see any data, or the service desk supplier doesn't see any data and say, okay, what is happening? And goes maybe to your administrator of this system. So he can, let's refresh it, see it here, okay, oh, this was this instance of that user. Let's search on it, and hey, there's an issue. And I can see immediately, oh, there were true errors. So I can go to there, and I can see, oh, okay, there were 2 errors given, and if I open it, the data source was not working. So with this, you can make it easier to debug and see, okay, there was some instance where some data was sent to the data source, but it wasn't working for the end user. And you can track and trace this with this system, with this new system. So as I mentioned, in the future, we're going to add more data. So that makes it easier to track and to do things with this. But this is the first step. Are there any questions about this? I don't see any remarks or questions. So I think everything is clear on this. So just a small summary, it helps you with seeing what a user does in the end user does in the delegated forms. And it helps you with debugging, but also a little bit with audit logging. Also, if we go to the future, we will add audit logging and task processing and all that kind of data. So it's really easy to see what happens at a run or an instance of that delegated form on one cell. Let's go to the voting. Okay, so there are more votes, and the second one is the limit concurrent actions for provisioning. So let's do that one. So let's go to provisioning. Let me close this window. We're going back to one window again, and then we're going to provisioning, and we go to a target system. Here I have multiple target systems. So this currently only works for the PowerShell targets systems. And if I go to a PowerShell target system and click on it and go to the concurrent action configuration, I can press here and I can limit the amount of concurrent actions that are running. And I can just put in a number here. So I could do 5, and I could do 2, or I can do 1 as an example. But for my example, I'm going to set this on 2. If it's not supplied, it will try to create as many concurrent actions as possible in our system. So that's the normal default way that we currently already have. So let's apply it. And also you will see, if you set it, you will see here the number of concurrent actions limited to 2. So there is a little bit of a summary. So you see that it's configured and it's enabled. It's really difficult to show this inside a real life situation. But what I want to do is a little bit tell you with a short presentation what happens behind the scenes. So let me start presentation. So here we have the enforcement engine. So that means is if you run an evaluation and after that an enforcement, some actions will trigger. So normally a single action will trigger, and that could be a create account or a assign permission or an enable account. And it's also per person, of course. So a person could have multiple actions running, but an action is per person and it's a particular type, like create account. And currently you can have multiple actions running. So maybe up to 4, but it could be much more. So it's at least 1 action until n actions. It's not defined. There are some limitations like the agent. If you're running with an agent, then it's limited to, I think, 2 concurrent actions per agent. So if you have multiple agents, you could still have more concurrent actions running. But if you're in the cloud, it's only created, I think, with a 10 or something like that. It's the maximum number. But now we change something. So we still have the enforcement engine, of course, and we build something that questions the remarks, and it gets the action concurrently of the configured value. So in our case, it was 2. So it says, okay, it's 2. We only want to do 2 actions at once, running besides each other. So it's say, okay, is a new action allowed? And in this case, there's no action started, so it will start an action, and a new action will come from the enforcement engine and say, okay, I only running 1 action, so I can start a new one. And this is constantly renewed and asked again. So if an action is finished, it will have a list of all new actions it should start and just picks the top one to start. And this goes, of course, really fast. So it could have a little bit of a performance drawback, but it ensures that only two actions are running. Also, this is done inside the cloud. So if you're running with an agent and you have multiple agents, only 2 actions will run on those agents, even if you have multiple agents. So that's really important to know that we don't do this on agent level, but in the cloud level. So it will only send 2 agents, in this case, agent actions, actions to the agent. So that's really important to know. Maybe you guys can think up a situation where you want to use this. And I will come back after the other feature. But if you put that in the chat, it would be really nice, and we can discuss this a little bit. So let's see. No, there are no new votes, but we're going to do the incident of the failed task system. The failed task. So let's go to manage portal. And what we have is currently we have the automation and we have the task where you can schedule a task or run a task, whatever you want. So in this case, let me show first the incidents. So currently there are no incidents inside the portal. And if I'm going to the task list and I have prepared a little special task that will fail with getting the ID groups, and I have run this, it should say that it fails, and there you see it fails the task. And if I go back to the task list, you see here as well it failed. And if I go back to my dashboard, you will see here there's a new incident created. And this also means that an email can be sent that this task has failed, if you configure it correctly, of course. So now you know with a more easy approach that one of the tasks has failed, you can set an email on it, so you will get notified. You don't have to go to the HelloID portal to see if it fails regularly. And also what's nice, if there are multiple runs, so let's say you schedule this 2 times a day and it runs again. So if I'm going back to the tasks and I have to go back, I'm going to say, okay, let's fill it again. So it runs again, save and run. It runs again and it should fail because I didn't change anything. So it should fail. Yeah, it fails. So in this case, you are not getting a new incident. So if we go back to the dashboard, you still have the same incident. And of course, if a different task will fail, it will create a new incident. But if this task will fail repeatedly after each other, it will stay open, and you will only get an email once. Of course, if an incident will stay open longer, you will get notifications of a reminder, which we add, I think, last release. But not a new incident will create it. And also what is really nice is it could be, of course, that, I don't know, your AD controller or your AD system is down, or that there's some mistake. So in this case, it runs the second time that day, and it is successful. So let me change this back a little bit. So this gives us a successful message. And then we're going to run it again. It's finished. Now it should see, you can see here it's a success. It should, yeah, you can see it here. It's finished and it's a success. So now if I'm going back to my dashboard, you can see the incident is closed. It's gone. And of course you can still see it if I want to see all my closed incidents. It's there, but there are a lot of closed incidents, I think, for this instance, because we test a lot. But it should be here somewhere. So you can always see it back. If you don't want to use this screen, you can also go to the reports where you can see it in the audit logging. There you can also see when an incident occurred and when it's opened and when it's closed. So with this, it's really easy to manage the task without going to HelloID on a daily basis. The same principle we also do if you see a huge increase, I don't want to say that, but a increase of more than 10% of the usage of each of the modules. So if there is an increase of 10% in the usage of, let's say, provisioning, you will also get an incident. There's only one change here, or different than the previous incident. This one will not automatically close, so you have to press on resolve. But it's just a checkup if you're really sure that this increase in usage is really correct, because this could also lead to increase of licenses, of course. So it's really good to know that and also an incident is created when you have a 10% increase of usage. And the usage is calculated with the usage of the day before. So this also always on the dashboard, the calculations of the day before. So if tonight a new calculation is done, it will use the numbers that you can see here, or also here, of course, in January. Also, if you want more details about the usage of the 3 different modules, you can also go to the audit logging of reporting here, reporting and control, and you can log into your audit logging, and you can see all those numbers there for a longer period and per day. So it's a little bit more detailed than the graph that you can see here. Let's go to the questions screen to see if there are any more questions. Yeah, I will come back to the remark of rule wavering, because that's one of the situations where you can use the session limitations. But let me first answer the question of Logan Hawker. Are there plans to make the incident webhook notification support the Slack format? No, because the incidents are stored in a way we support, and we just send the incident directly back with the webhook. So if you want to put it into Slack, you have to do some conversion with it. I think it's really easy to do that. There are some, I think even free applications that can do that, just running in the cloud, and they can convert it to a Slack format, whatever you want. But we're not going to support the Slack format unless, because then we have to support all other different formats of each of the ITSM systems, or or any other, or notification systems, messages systems, whatever. The other remark of Roel Everink, it's great for custom Exchange, PowerShell target system, as Exchange can limit the amount of concurrent connections. Yeah, that's true. I think on-premise it's something around 5 for Exchange. And you can set it to 2 or 3 maybe, so you know that there are only 2 or 3 connections, concurrent connections to Exchange if you limit this number. We didn't yet test it with Exchange, but I think after all the other stuff I tested, it should work properly. Also, another example for you guys to know is CSV export, because with this you can set the limitation to 1 and you can just export everything to a single file, which is really useful, I think, for a lot of connectors that just want a CSV import each day of the whole set or an incremental, depends. If it's just, of course, if it's incremental, you can just remove the file after each import. And if it's not, then just make the file larger every day. But that's also a very useful use case, I think. I don't think there are any more questions. And there are no features anymore. So then I would like to thank you for this joining this webinar. If there are any questions, you can contact me or just place some topic on the feedback.helloid.com site, or if you need any support, you can just fill in a support ticket or just call your vendor, of course, support office. Also, we will react on the YouTube comments, so that's also a possible way to contact us. And if you want more details on the release, so more small notes and things like that, go to roadmap.helloid.com and you can go to latest release, and there's a tab with the release notes. And there's, I don't want to say everything, but almost everything. Maybe some small pixel mistakes that are missing in the release notes, but I think everything important is there. So thank you again, and see you next time.